Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Guitar Talk. We like to talk about guitars and gear, vintage ones, new ones, collections, you name it. We're just a bunch of guitar geeks around here, and we hope to share some information with you that maybe you didn't know. I'm very excited about today's guest. I've known today's guest for a number of years now, and he's initially from Rhode Island. And he has shared the stage with folks like Warren Haynes, Peter Wolf, the Goo Goo Dolls, Four Non Blondes, and the band and Big Country. He currently leads a great rock and roll rhythm and blues band called Detroit Breakdown. He is probably my equal when it comes to hoarding equipment and being obsessive with guitars and amps. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Scott Coy. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Happy to be here.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
So you've been pretty busy.
Yes.
With the band. Tell us a little bit about what you're holding on to right there.
Here is one of my favorites, pretty much my primary guitar. It's a 1963 50th reissue, so it was made in 2013.
Okay.
Gibson Memphis ES335. It's a reissue of the the block necks,
Yep.
not the dot neck. And it has pretty much their standard Burstbucker 1 and 2 pickups, but it's just something about how it's made that is really something special.
Very resonant instrument.
Really resonant. I think one of the great things about it that makes it so is that it's made true to form, where the center block of maple is actually cut out in between the pickups, and that was designed to help the guys who were making it wire it. And
now, its baby brother, the 330, and the models below, they don't have that
they're
block
completely
in the middle,
hollow.
and they feed back a lot more because of it.
Yeah. From what I understand, the design team under Ted McCarty wanted to get a hollow sounding instrument but have it feed back less like a solid instrument. And this is what they came up with, and in the process ended up coming up with the thin line design and mating the humbuckers to it.
And for those of you out there in guitar land, a little trivia for you. ES stands for Electric Spanish. That's what Gibson had in mind when they gave it that name. And this is appointed pretty much exactly like the original model.
Right. Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
Or at least the second generation thereof.
Right.
Yeah.
The dot inlay one was the original model.
Right, right.
Those are nice guitars too, but I've always been partial to these.
Right.
I actually owned an original one when I was younger.
Excellent.
And it was a wonderful instrument that I never should have parted with, but we know those stories.
Oh, far too well.
Yeah, and now prior to this, I know you were you really like Strats a lot too. You had quite a few of them.
Yeah, and I still have a few. You know, there's always
Sure.
another guitar kicking around under a bed or in a closet somewhere at my
Do you
house.
still bring a Strat to a gig?
I haven't lately. What we try to do with this particular pair of projects that I'm in at this point is we try to go ahead and have one guitar as a primary instrument that covers everything that we do, and have a direct backup. So there's no real thinking involved. You're switching pickups and changing volume and tone levels, but when I break a string on this one and I go to that one, it's the same
Exact same feel and sound, pretty much.
Trying to segue song to song to keep people up and on the floor and that
Absolutely,
kind of thing,
absolutely. What, before you got to own instruments like this, what was your first good guitar and amp?
It was also a Gibson and a Fender.
Okay.
I had a little Vibrochamp, also Silverface.
Great little amp.
Yeah, great little amp. And a mid-60s SG Special that was factory, believe it or not, like a TV yellow color.
Wow.
You know, it was all weather checked. And
Bet you wish you still had that.
You're not kidding. But it had been routed for humbuckers instead of the original P90s.
Yeah.
And someone had put an old Badass bridge on it and changed the tuners out and things like that. But I love that guitar.
Typical changes that were made in the
early
70s and 80s to those guitars.
For sure.
How many guitars do you typically bring to a gig at this point?
Usual club gigs, it's 2.
That's not too bad.
It's not bad. It follows the philosophy of using the same one and only using a backup as needed. And most club stages are pretty small.
Yeah.
And I usually will bring my primary amp, which is a Dr. Z, with an extension cabinet under it.
Sure.
More as an amp stand than anything half the time because the stages are small. And but if we play festival gigs, you know, we play the Bristol 4th of July concert series, and we play Twin River, places that are very time sensitive.
Sure.
So, the biggest problem you have at a gig like that is if you break a string and there's no guitar tech to change it, what's the first thing on your mind?
Yeah.
Breaking another string on your backup.
Right.
So I'll bring 3 and sometimes 4.
To those jobs,
Yeah.
just to be safe.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to.
Exactly.
And today, I don't know if you can see them back there, folks, but we've got a couple of vintage Fender Deluxe reverb amps, and there's a Dr. Z Maz back there. What's your main amp on the gig these days?
It's the Maz.
The Dr. Z Maz, yeah.
Pretty bulletproof, cuts through really nicely. It's got a good sound that balances somewhere between Fender, Marshall, and Vox. believe it or
Yeah,
not.
those
So,
EL84
yeah.
tubes
Really great.
have a very specific
Yep.
sound they bring
Yep.
to the table.
Yep. And they get hot, so you get plenty of gain and saturation. They're cheap to replace when you have to, and
Yeah.
that type of thing. So
Yeah, our friend Tom Ferraro, who's been a guest in the past on the
Absolutely.
show, he has one, and
Yep.
he plays a big Gibson hollow body out of it,
Yep.
and a Les Paul. He gets a great sound.
oh yeah.
Now, when you go to the job, you probably got a pedal board of some sort
do.
that you bring along, and
I
that
do.
sort of thing.
I'm a certified pedal junkie.
Yeah, I
but-
go through phases where I
Yeah.
have 5, 6, 7 of them in front of me.
Yep.
And then all I want to see is my vibrato switch from the Fender amp and nothing
Absolutely.
else. I get fed up with them.
And that's the balance.
Yeah.
Because what's the big problem with a pedal board? They add capacitance with the long cable runs and the
natural
bypasses.
tone suffers.
It sucks that tone, that high end, right out.
It does, and I don't care if you've got you can't use all true bypass
Nope.
either, because that
Nope.
wrecks the signal.
Exactly right.
So if you've got too many, and then you get into the whole dance of the right power supplies,
Exactly
and
right.
the right
Exactly
patch cables, and it's maddening. It takes me
Exactly.
away from thinking about practicing
Yep.
and making
The
music.
tap dance,
Right.
changing the pedal settings.
So right now I'm in the mindset of no pedals.
Yep. Well, and I think that's a really
That'll
great
change,
point.
though.
Of course, but it's a great point. I was on a gig a few weeks ago, and there was a little ghost in the pedal board, and I had to, mid-song, unplug the wireless and take the cable that went from the end of the pedal board out and put it into the guitar, so I was running straight in.
Yep.
Which is a key on choosing the right guitar and the right amp, because you have got to have one pairing that gives you the vast majority of your gain and tone
Yes.
from that pairing, because inevitably something's going to go wrong.
Sooner or later,
Yep.
there's no doubt.
Which also brings me back to the actual pedal junkie part of my personality, because I've got tons of them.
I mean, in fairness, too, the quality of the pedals today, folks, is
It's much better.
extraordinary.
Much better.
I mean, the old vintage pedals that are commanding big money, some up to $1,000 a pedal, while they have sentimental value and they make a certain sound, they're really not as good
Right.
as what the boutique guys are building today.
sure.
They're noisy.
Yep.
They
Yep.
take away your top end when
Yep.
they're in the signal chain.
Absolutely.
They only sound great when they're doing the one thing they're made to do.
Yep, that is true.
So the stuff they're making today, Strymon, Wampler.
Absolutely. Yeah. JHS is one of my personal favorites.
JHS, there's a whole list of guys making great ones.
Yep, yep.
So
and
tell
that's
me,
what
when
I
you,
do.
Getting started, did you have any formal lessons from anybody?
I did take about 6 months worth of lessons.
You did. Who was your teacher?
Yeah, he was a guy named Mike Silva in Barrington.
Ah.
And I ended up, I was 13 years old, and there were a bunch of friends playing, so we ended up sharing information and experience and stuff. And after that 6-month period, I kind of drifted away from him because
Yep.
my ear developed faster than my sight reading skills.
Sure.
Now, I wish I kept up the sight reading, but I do have a good theory basis.
Yes.
So, if you wanted to play a swing number
So
in
you can
B
read a
flat,
chord chart,
yeah,
stuff
and
like that, yeah.
and the lingo and the theory behind
Sure.
it, knowing what key and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, you know the old adage, if you want to get a guitar player to turn down his amp, put a piece of sheet music in front of him.
That's right.
You know, I know some guys, some of the guests I've had on are so extraordinary with their reading skills, it defies human logic.
Yeah.
Ron Murray was
Right.
on. Ron's extraordinary as a reader. He always has been. Classical player Steve McChena. These guys, they just look at the music and hear it.
Right.
I never
sure.
learned to read that well.
Yeah, it's tough.
I gave up on it, and but I
of
can
us
read.
do, right?
Yeah, I
So-
can read charts, and I understand diatonic harmony and theory and things like that. But real sight reading is quite the
It is
skill
a
for
talent.
the guitar player,
Yep.
and it's a valuable one.
Yeah, sure it is. Sure it is.
You know, I
Guys
wished
like
I-
Tommy Tedesco will tell you, and you know,
Absolutely.
they made their living doing that stuff.
So after the lessons, about what point and how old were you when you started to say, I'm going to get some buddies together and make a little noise?
It was pretty quick.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, and you know, the music we made, I'm sure, wasn't very listenable, but
Was
yet
to
you do
us.
it, and absolutely to us and to our friends, and the more you play with someone, the better you get, and it just compounds that way.
I've always told everybody, my students, and I was fortunate to have the opportunities growing up, but try as hard as you can to play with people that are better than you.
For sure, for sure.
You know, that's how you're going to get good.
Yep, in
That-
anything,
that's
whether
right.
it's sports, music, whatever. You know,
Without
learning
a
from
doubt.
someone in your career. Yeah.
All the musicians around here when I was growing up were all a couple of years older than me and all had more experience. So when I reached the point where I could play 10 or 15 songs from beginning to end, which is an art in itself
Sure,
when you're starting
and a set.
out. Yeah. Then I started getting in with some of the older players.
Yep.
That I suddenly learned about arranging and
Sure.
making a band sound good. You know,
Right.
being part of a band.
Right, for sure.
And I found that was a different experience. So, do you have a preference, Fender, Gibson? Are you one of those guys in one camp or the other?
You know, I love them all. I love the oddballs. I love the old standbys and,
Yep.
and the icons. I mean, primarily I like Gibson, and in particular the 335, because it's, as we've discussed before, it's a great all-rounder. It's very versatile. You've got a lot
It's
of...
a Swiss Army knife. I think
Absolutely.
the two guitars, and
We're
you're looking
holding
at them, folks. Mine is a 62 Fender Custom Shop Telecaster Custom. Scott has the Gibson ES35 Memphis build. These two guitars, I think, represent everything you've ever heard in pop music.
I think you're right.
Country music, jazz, blues, these are the Swiss Army knife style guitars. I mean, any guitar is wonderful in the hands of a skilled player.
For sure.
But these are the two you've probably heard on more recordings
Yep.
than any other instrument
More
in
rock
history.
records have that than you would think, and more country records have this,
That's right.
which is amazing.
Led Zeppelin has a ton of, all those first two albums
Yep.
are primarily Telecaster.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the guy that really, the two players that got me hooked on 335s were Elvin Bishop. In the 70s, when I heard the solo on Fooled Around and
There
Fell
you
in
go.
Love.
Great one. Yep.
I was like, wow, that's the sweetest sound I've ever heard out of a
Yep.
Gibson. And of course, Larry Carlton.
There you go. Excellent.
You know, the sounds he was getting on those 70s Steely Dan albums out of the Dot Neck was very
Right.
impressive. Alvin Lee, another
Absolutely.
335
That's a great
guy.
one. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a
Let's
great
jam
one.
a little bit.
Okay.
Let's do a little jam, little boogie woogie and E. Oh, that sounded great.
Yes, sir.
That guitar's got a fat sound.
It is fat, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
very
amazing.
Juicy. All those descriptive terms like bloom and
Oh yeah, yeah,
swell that you hear come out of the notes.
absolutely.
And, you know, having a nice simple signal chain, a chord straight to the amp.
Gotta love it.
That's going to bring out all the tone that thing's got in it.
Yeah, man, I really love it, and you know, it was considered a slim taper style neck, but this is the fattest slim taper you'll ever feel, and I really believe that adds.
Yeah,
a lot
I mean,
to it.
I've played '60s ones that are uncomfortably skinny.
Absolutely.
That's not like that.
No.
That's
No.
the sweet spot.
Right.
That's got a great neck on it.
I have a '59 Les Paul reissue that's got a really fat neck.
Yeah, those
and
are
it's-
really big.
It is. It's not. This is not as big as that, but it does have a lot of girth. And
Yeah.
I think in
And
concert,
that adds to the sustain.
I think so.
And it's the same with the Telecasters, folks. I've played ones with skinny little necks on them. They sound great. They've got that spanky sound. But this one is the '60s profile, and it's a tiny bit bigger than some of the original models. And it gives it a little more sustain. And the Blonde Nocaster on the stand there, it's got a much bigger neck on it.
Right.
And that has quite a bit of sustain and resonance
Absolutely.
through it. So the neck shapes and sizes have a fair amount to do with vibration
I agree.
transfer that's happening across the
I agree.
across the instrument.
Well, I mean, it only makes sense. The fatter it is, the more rigid it is, the more that string can keep vibrating.
Yeah.
I think that's all it is to it.
Now, do you mod your guitars and amps at all?
Yeah.
Any secrets you want to share?
Well, I mean, there's nothing secret about it. It's just trying to search for the tone that's in your head.
Do you do anything with capacitors and things like that?
Yeah, mostly pots more than caps.
I see.
Where I usually use the Bourne audio taper 500s on
500K pots.
Yeah, that's right. They have a real smooth, tapered feel to them. So, I mean, the key with what you and I play is being able to tweak something from 0 to 10. And I mean, you know, most of my leads I'm on 10, crunchier rhythms it's 7, cleaner rhythms it's 4.
Yep.
You know, that kind of a thing.
That's about the same here too
Yeah.
as well.
And certain potentiometers don't allow you to do that.
Some of them, you go from nothing to
Yep.
full blast.
Yep,
at
in
the
a matter of
touch of a
2.
knob.
Yeah.
And I like to do this pedal steel swells
yeah.
and the tone control
Yep.
swells. Right, and you need a taper that's going to allow for that.
Right.
On my Blonde one, that guitar came from Neil Vitullo, who you know, and Neil's
do.
a supreme tweaker.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, he knows all the tricks. And he put a different cap on it
Yes.
and different things. And that one has a roll on the controls is out of this world.
Right.
This one came right from the factory with the right feel.
Excellent.
I
Yeah.
can get the swells
And
out
sometimes they do. I mean, the caps
Yeah.
that are in this are the reissue Bumblebees, and
Right.
so
Those are
that
the
came
best.
from the factory.
Yeah.
That's fine. They work great, but I didn't like the standard. I think they were CTS pots, and they just didn't. The taper wasn't right, and they were
Right.
very stiff. So those had to go. And the other problem was, while this is a lightweight aluminum tailpiece, and it's great and it helps with the resonance and whatnot, the stock bridge is a no retaining wire ABR1.
Right.
And I was at a gig at a local place that is built on a dock, and I popped a string and out
The saddle went
came
flying.
the saddle.
Oh, no.
And I think I saw it go through the dock.
Oh, boy.
So these are Tone Pros
Tone
that
Pros.
lock, and you know.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah. It really
Now, do
works
you
well.
do your own tweaking to some degree?
I do some of it.
I mean, a
but
335 is not like popping a Tully control panel open.
Any of the electronic stuff,
gotta go
I take
fishing
to
in
the
those
luthier.
things,
Yeah. I don't. I typically don't do any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I want it done right and done the first time, so I'll
Of
usually
course.
do it that way.
Because the
But
band
setups
you're in,
usually
Detroit Breakdown, folks, is the band, and the other band is Black
Black
Cadillac.
Cadillac Trio. Yes.
Roots music, the way you love it, the
Yep.
way it's supposed to be played. You get a pretty fair amount of solo space
Yes.
with both acts.
Yeah, a lot with the trio, in such
Right.
that I'm the one primary soloist.
Now, your drummer, is he a former Viper?
He is in Detroit Breakdown. Billy Bam Bam Donahue.
Yeah,
is
I
our
thought
drummer.
so.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
so. And our good friend Reggie plays bass.
Absolutely, Rich Roussel.
Yep.
Yeah, Paul Pettit on lead vocals, and he also plays saxophone. He plays blues harp, harmonica. Flute, he's kind of a jack of all trades.
Excellent.
Richard Giacovelli rounds it out on Hammond organ. He plays a real B3 through a real Leslie rotating
Who's moving
speaker.
that in and out of the gig?
Not him. Luckily, Billy and Reggie have strong backs, and they usually move it for him. But
Nothing, and I mean nothing.
now I don't
sounds like
want to
a real
leave
B3.
out two guys though. Danny DeSa is our drummer in the trio.
Okay.
And he is a singing drummer, which is great.
Excellent.
And making us sound our best is Russ Peck, who is our official 6th member and 4th member, respectively. He's our sound man, and he runs
Stage
state-of-the-art
manager
stuff.
and
Yep,
everything, yeah.
absolutely. We're using an X-Air system to help with the setup and breakdown, so it's all wireless, controlled
Wow.
with an iPad. It's really
The
fantastic.
technology now.
It's great.
For live sound.
It helps because there's no crew anymore.
I mean, I find myself, I'm going backwards with technology with my amps and
Yep,
things like that.
Exactly, right.
But with live sound, I
Yep.
mean, my friend is front of house manager at Rose Wharf in Boston, and he's walking the perimeter of the venue, and he's mixing on an iPad.
Yes, it's fantastic.
It's crazy,
Yeah,
the technology now. I mean, and the cabinets and things like that have gotten smaller and more efficient,
all Class
better
D,
sounding.
self-powered. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where can folks see you? Any gigs coming up?
Yes, Detroit Breakdown's next gig is New Year's Eve at the Narragansett Cafe in Jamestown, one of the greatest venues.
That's a
on local
legendary
level.
place in Rhode Island, yeah.
Absolutely. The owners are fantastic, John and Kathy. It's a great place, never a cover. And the trio's next gig is at the Narrow Center for the Arts. The
Great venue.
Fantastic place, run by Patrick Norton. He's a wonderful guy who has really kept the old spirit of live music
Present.
and original live
The
music.
Narrow Center for the Arts is a gem of the South Coast.
It really is.
It's the
It
premier
really
live
is.
venue of the South Coast.
Agreed.
And the job they do bringing talent in over there, folks, if you haven't been to the Narrows, it's kind of a bring your own lunch place.
Yeah.
You can bring in some food, you bring in a bottle of wine and
That's
some
it.
glasses.
Adult
you sit
beverages
down,
welcome.
and you listen to some of the finest music in
Fantastic
the United States.
stuff. Yep. We're going to be opening the second day of the 4th annual Winter Blues Festival. So 5
Yes.
o'clock to 5:45 on Saturday, the 14th of January.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a wonderful spot. I know my friend Sarah Borges just played there a few nights ago. She does an annual show there and does well. And I've seen some wonderful acts there. It's wonderful you guys are part of that.
Yes, yeah, we love it.
If you, I'd like to hear, rumor has it Peter Wolf jumped on stage with you guys at a
He
gig.
did. He did. He was playing at the Narrows a couple of years back, quite a few years back now, and we were over right next door at the club that's right in its shadow. It used to be called Water Street.
Water Street. I played there,
Yeah,
yes.
it was a great place. And we were playing when he finished, and he came downstairs, and apparently he was sitting at the stage entrance for a couple of tunes and decided we were good enough that he wanted to
jump
come
in.
on, so we played house party with him and stuff like
Wow.
that, yeah, which was pretty fun.
And it was like the man, he came in,
Yep.
did his thing, and he was gone.
That's it. That's it. He's a rock star.
Any photos? Did anyone get anything
Yeah,
for you to memorize that?
we,
memorialize that?
He signed one of our posters, and he did take a couple of shots with our singer who was playing harp at the time.
Oh,
So,
fantastic. That's good that you got
Unfortunately,
that.
because he didn't hang around, we didn't all get photos, but...
I got to share a bill with his old guitar player, some
Yep.
guy named Jay Giles.
Yeah, I've heard of
one
that
night. And it was him and I and James Montgomery on a
Yes.
bill with Grace Corman, as she calls herself now. Grace Morrison is what I
Okay.
remember as.
Yep.
But all supremely talented folks. And
Awesome.
Jay was the same thing. He came in when it was time for his set. He played, he did his thing, he did it great.
Yep.
And then he was gone before
That's
the
it.
encore was over.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
That's fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, they're big time guys, you know. That's great that he jumped on stage with you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Let's jam a little
Okay.
bit more as we begin to roll towards the credits. And
Sounds
folks,
good.
once again, this is Scott from Detroit Breakdown. Go and see this band. You're not going to be disappointed. They're all around the South Coast, Rhode Island, Mass, and you got a website that's going to be shown that you can find the schedule at if you want to learn a little bit more about the band. So thanks for being with us on Guitar Talk. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.